Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm your breakfast companion, Sam Sachs. Save me one of those apple danishes. And we begin at Union Station in Washington, D.C., where some extremely fascist shit is going down. On Wednesday, Vice President J.D. Vance, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and White House advisor Stephen Miller strolled through the city's train station surrounded by troops so they could go eat some burgers at Shake Shack. Here's how the stunt was received by residents. Get used to it, guys. You're going to hear that everywhere you go. Forever. Here was Miller then mocking city residents and threatening to jam more troops into the city out of spite.
And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots. They have no connections to the city. They have no families they are raising in this city. They have no one that they are sending to school in this city. They have no jobs in this city. They have no connections to this community at all. And I'm glad they're here today. Because me, Pete, and the Vice President are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of this city and never have been.
Wait, suddenly it's not okay to be white? Woke Stephen Miller. But yeah, it's just old white hippies opposed to this stuff. Like in this crowd of residents who chased off ICE agents from Columbia Heights Metro earlier this week. Sure does look like a lot of old white hippies, huh? New polling from the Washington Post shows that actually 79% of DC residents oppose Trump's takeover. 79%, Stephen. The White House is trying to justify its federal seizure of the city, despite crime rates being at a 30-year low, by launching a sham investigation into allegations that DC police manipulated crime stats. Claim the administration has repeatedly made with no evidence. Here's J.D. Vance.
Are you going to be releasing evidence of this?
Of what? That D.C. has a terrible crime problem? You just got to look around. Obviously, D.C. has a terrible crime problem. The Department of Justice statistics back it up. The FBI statistics back it up. Just talk to a resident of this city, this beautiful, great American city. Don't they deserve... we talk about human rights. We hear these people outside screaming, free D.C. Let's free D.C. from lawlessness. Let's free Washington, D.C. from one of the highest murder rates in the entire world. Let's free Washington, D.C. so that young families can walk around and feel safe and secure.
You see, we must free D.C. by occupying it with the military. Hey, just wondering, does freeing D.C. also mean giving residents the right to govern themselves and also have representation in Congress? Or nah? What does freedom look like according to the vice president? How about an MRAP T-boning a car in a Capitol Hill neighborhood? This is the sort of stuff that happens when military vehicles meant to clear landmines are deployed on residential streets for no reason other than intimidation. The driver of this car had to be extricated from the vehicle with the jaws of life and was transported to the hospital with injuries. Let freedom ring. Now to the International Criminal Court, which was just hit with more sanctions from Washington. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced it was freezing any assets in the U.S. belonging to 4 members of the UN court, including a judge from Canada and a judge from France, as well as prosecutors from Fiji and Senegal. Rubio claimed the sanctions are in response to the court investigating U.S. and Israeli nationals for war crimes. He added, quote, "The court is a national security threat that has been an instrument for lawfare against the United States and our close ally, Israel. The U.S. is not a member of the ICC, but has been launching attacks against it in response to the court's probe of Israeli human rights abuses in Gaza. Last year, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The U.S. previously sanctioned the chief prosecutor of the ICC, Karim Khan. And in June, the White House rolled out more sanctions against 4 tribunal judges on the court. Netanyahu applauded the new actions against the ICC, which take place just as Israel intensifies its genocide in Gaza with plans for a full occupation of the enclave. France expressed dismay, however, and urged the U.S. to withdraw the sanctions. One way France can show its commitment to international law and the ICC in the future is by forcing Netanyahu's plane down next time it crosses into French airspace and arresting the scumbag. And finally, individuals detained at a controversial immigrant jail in Florida have been denied access to legal counsel, according to the ACLU. A federal judge this week heard a case brought by the Civil Liberties Group against Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Civil rights attorneys are seeking a court order guaranteeing detainees at the facility, dubbed by the administration as Alligator Alcatraz, access to lawyers. The government claimed they have provided means for migrants to reach their legal counsel through video conferencing, but attorneys noted that these conversations are not in private, therefore not confidential. They also reported scheduling delays and unreasonable requirements before being able to meet with their clients. Remember, most of the people locked up at the facility have not committed any crimes, but are indefinitely detained just because of how they look and because they haven't yet achieved full citizenship. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wants to expand Alligator Alcatraz to lock up even more innocent people, but those plans were temporarily put on hold by a court due to environmental concerns in the Everglades. DeSantis did announce the state would construct a new immigrant jail in northern Florida that's being called Deportation Depot. Because when you're constructing a human rights black hole torture prison, the most important thing is to find a cute, alliterative name for it. Sickos, all the way down. And ICE is trying to attract more sickos to its ranks. ICE spent nearly $1 million tricking out trucks just to shoot some recruitment videos to post online. $1 million putting paint on trucks for a Twitter video. Somehow the folks at Doge missed that one, huh? You know, I'm nearly twice as old as ICE in the Department of Homeland Security. Goes to show you that they're not at all integral to the country, and they should be smashed into 1,000 pieces, and then those pieces should be swept up and launched into space. Sadly, it's the Department of Education that's being dismantled instead. Elon Musk and conservative courts have effectively blocked the National Labor Relations Board from taking action against companies that violate workers' organizing rights. SpaceX and other companies facing NLRB probes sued the 90-year-old labor agency, alleging that its structure is suddenly unconstitutional and therefore its orders are unenforceable. And this week, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals found that SpaceX was likely to prevail in its case and kept in place a hold on all NLRB actions pending against the company. 2 other firms, Energy Transfer and Find Help, were also shielded from the labor board. A Trump-appointed judge, Don Willett, claimed in his ruling that companies face immediate harm from an agency that's unconstitutional. According to Bloomberg, the ruling has far-reaching impacts Quote, the decision seems to guarantee that companies in the Fifth Circuit, which covers Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, can get district courts to block unfair labor practice cases by filing unconstitutional lawsuits against the agency. So right now, bosses in those 3 states can union bust with no concern that they'll ever face consequences from the federal government, just as long as their lawyer files some paperwork first. The NLRB case against SpaceX stemmed from a complaint from 8 employees who say they were fired after expressing protected grievances about Musk. Amazon, Trader Joe's, and dozens of other companies are also involved in lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of the NLRB. The crux of their argument is that the NLRB board members have executive power, but they can't be removed by the president at will, which gives them too much power. The argument is bogus for 2 main reasons. One, Congress has passed laws creating independent executive agencies that have arrangements just like the NLRB going back 150 years. And the Supreme Court has previously upheld their constitutionality. The NLRB and other enforcement agencies are being singled out only now because they investigate corporate wrongdoing. Second, the claim that the president can't fire NLRB board members is being challenged right now by the president who fired at will the chair of the NLRB, Gwen Wilcox. Now, whether that was legal or not is still being worked out in the courts. But if it's determined that he can do that, then that blows apart SpaceX and Amazon's case against the NLRB. Right? That's all assuming there is any coherent legal rationale at play here, and this isn't all just a form of Calvin ball by conservative judges to allow the exploitation of labor to continue. Residents around the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean could get a light show this weekend with SpaceX cleared to blow up another one of its rockets. Test another one of its rockets. Starship Test Flight 10. The Federal Aviation Administration said in a statement it was satisfied with the company's mishap investigation into Test Flight 9 back in May, during which the booster exploded in the Gulf and the Starship exploded somewhere over the Indian Ocean, neither of which was planned. The company conducted similar mishap investigations after Starship test launches 7 and 8, which also ended in failure, with both ships blowing up over the Atlantic off the coast of Florida. The company accidentally blew up a rocket on the launch pad in June during a test firing of the engines. So despite batting 1,000 in blowing up rockets this year, and despite the Mexican government investigating SpaceX over damage to its coastlines caused by Elon Musk's exploding rockets, the FAA is letting SpaceX do it again. The oversight agency said in a statement, quote, the FAA required investigation of the SpaceX Starship Flight 9 mishap is closed. There are no reports of public injury or damage to public property. SpaceX can now proceed with Starship Flight 10 launch operations under its current license. The launch window opens on Sunday, so keep an eye out. For this week in working class history, we're sailing back to Zanzibar, 1948. This week that year, port workers went on strike, shutting down the Tanzanian island for weeks and securing higher wages and better conditions. The industrial action was led by a dock worker named Abbas Othman, who may have come to Zanzibar for the specific purpose of igniting class war on the docks. At the time, the port was owned by the African Wharfage Company, a British firm which held a monopoly on loading and unloading ships. Workers sent the company a letter demanding a raise and improved job safety. They were rejected, so they went on strike. The work stoppage quickly paralyzed the island. Since the wharfage company was a monopoly, no one else was on hand to unload essentials off the ships. The government declared the strike illegal. In fact, it declared all public meetings not approved by colonial authorities illegal. It read the Riot Act to strikers. It engaged in violent suppression and arrest against the strikers. But none of it worked. The port strike not only continued, after a few weeks, it spread into a general strike. Shop workers, drivers, civil servants all walked off the job. At the time, the top colonial authority on Zanzibar, Resident Glende, learned of the mass work stoppage while he was playing golf, and his caddy went on strike. After nearly a month, there was a breakthrough in negotiations. Workers were given better wages, pay for overtime, and one free meal a day. In a few months, the African Wharfage Company increased pay for all workers to ward off another strike. Also, a committee was formed to advise the government on working conditions at the port. And so, another example in history of strikes working. Thanks to the team at Working Class History for giving us access to their archives. They're on social media with more on the Zanzibar General Strike and other events that happen in working class history, including the start of the Haitian Revolution in 1791, Nat Turner's Rebellion in 1831, and the Salad Bowl Strike of 1970. Back with more next week. All right, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from Florida. It was sent in by Charles in Fort Lauderdale. Enjoy. Thank you, Charles. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have a YouTube and podcast channel, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day, capitalism will fall. Until then, we're going to be right here. See you tomorrow.